Hello and welcome back to Continental Club. We discuss the hottest topics in European football. Joining myself and McCubs with Henry away is Alan Feehely, editor of Football Espana and freelance journalist. Alan, thank you so much for joining us on Continental Club. How are you doing, my friend?
Very good. Suffering with the heat here in Madrid a little bit, Dougie, but I'm happy to be on here talking with yourselves for the next 40 minutes or so.
Nice one. Yeah, we had that heat last week, but luckily it's dissipated now in the UK. But McCubs, you're back from Croatia as well. How are you doing, McCubs?
Yeah, good thanks. Had a good break. Very happy to have missed the heat wave in London. Kind of had it in Croatia, but when you've got the kind of option of a beach and doing nothing with the majority of your day, which I did for 2 weeks, it's a lot nicer in the heat. So yeah, feeling very thankful for that. And yeah, doing well, Dukes. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. Excited about today's episode. We're doing a La Liga special, hence the Real Betis shirt. And I put out a tweet earlier asking for questions. We've got loads of them in for Alan. We're going to discuss them today. And we're going to kick off with @CoolerHD's question, which says, La Liga Favorites, ? After Barcelona's summer. Now, Alan, we've talked a lot about economic levers, etc. on Eurofootball Daily. We've all tried to become financial experts. So we're going to leave that to one side. They have signed these players and they're looking to register Raphinha and Lewandowski. But where do you think this tips the balance in terms of La Liga's title race next year?
That's important because I think a lot of people have been debating the morality of Barcelona's activities this summer and the legality of it too, even you could say. But there's no doubting that they put a very competitive team together and that in the standalone season 22-23, should they register who they've signed and should they get the Jules Kounde deal over the line, which seems to be imminent, I think they're the favourites for La Liga, to be honest with you. I think that nobody else has that mix of defensive solidity, midfield dominance, attacking potency. I mean, Real Madrid obviously are one of the best teams in Europe. They won the Champions League and La Liga last season, but they don't have a history of retaining that many league titles. And I think this season their focus will more be on the Champions League than La Liga. They were quite lucky last season in that they had no real challenger when Sevilla fell off. So they wrapped up La Liga with 4 games to go and focused purely on winning their 14th Champions League title. And winning La Liga last season was kind of the side mission, if you want to say, to win the Champions League. Whereas Barcelona this year, I think they want to go for everything. I mean, we've already heard Joan Laporta talk about repeating the achievements of 2009 and winning everything there is to win. Whether they'll be able to do that or not is debatable, but I think they'll be going for La Liga and the Champions League with equal strength and with equal ambition and equal hunger. And I think that given the players they've assembled, the squad they've assembled, and the momentum behind the club at the moment, the us against world mentality within the club at the moment, I would back them to do it. So right now, given who everyone have signed, I would back them.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that backs against the wall mentality. I've seen that on Twitter over the last couple of months amongst the Barcelona fans. Very defensive, understandably. And, they're excited about their prospect of their team becoming, one of the best sides in Europe once again. And Joan Laporta, he's always been a big talker. I mean, McCubs, the frontline signings are really spectacular in Raphinha and Lewandowski. I think they instantly add so much quality and depth to that. But do you think they've made a slight mistake? I mean, we've been talking about it for years on Continental Club about that fullback depth. And we're seeing, Azpilicueta and Alonso linked. But do you think they should have maybe targeted some higher quality fullbacks or more in their prime, I should say, over, Lewandowski and Raphinha?
Yeah, I think so, or any at all really. Any fullback that looks like a long-term prospect. We've been talking about, like you say, Diggs, for years they've been needing to target those positions. Jordi Alba, luckily, just is quite an evergreen left back, but there will come a season when he does drop off in terms of his productivity, especially going forward. So yeah, I think that is an area where I think Real Madrid still have the upper hand, and I think it's the one thing that I think does, for me, make kind of putting Barcelona out there as favourites, I'm a little bit uneasy about it, partly because the squad is less settled than Real Madrid's, and secondly, I think the fullback positions, they're definitely inferior. Elsewhere on the pitch, I don't think there's too much between the two sides, but yeah, I think they did make a mistake. Well, they have not gone about it in the right way in that sense. The right back slot hasn't been really properly filled for a number of years. Obviously, Dani Alves came in January and did very well, but obviously he's gone now. Serginho Dest, I think that is still a good player in there, but you speak to any Barca fan, the general consensus is that he's not quite at the level that is needed to succeed at Barca. So yeah, I think that's one area they've neglected. But at the same time, for the first time in however many years, I can't even remember how many, they've really gone to town in the central areas of defence, and I think that's huge for them. Like Raphinha and Lewandowski, do obviously add a lot up front, but at the same time, Raphinha is going to potentially be vying for a place with Ousmane Dembele, who is probably, I don't know, one of the two best players at the club attacking wise. Lewandowski, how much is he going to be sharing minutes with Aubameyang? The actual output that's going to be elevated as a result of those two, I'm not sure what the difference is going to be. As opposed to if they just had Aubameyang and Dembele fully fit for the whole season playing in those positions. So, but at the back, having Christensen coming in, if he can adapt quickly, if they can get Jules Kounde over the line, having those two and Araujo to choose from at centre back, and finally alleviate pressure from PK and let Eric Garcia kind of develop in a slightly more measured way. I think that's really, really good business from them, and I guess it also means that Araujo can fill in at right back if needs be as well. So I think the defensive signings have actually been excellent from Barca, and I think that's probably where they've been smartest this summer. I think attacking wise, they've got so many options now, but I think really they're the best thing they did attacking wise was tying down Dembele to that new deal. I think it's the defence which I've been more impressed by, from a Barcelona perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It feels like they've almost got the opposite issues. I think Real Madrid look really strong in defence and midfield, and a little bit weak maybe in terms of depth and attack. They went for Mbappe at the start of this window, didn't manage to get him, and haven't really looked at another forward seriously since. It seems surprising that they didn't, make more of an effort maybe for Serge Gnabry or someone like that before he renewed his contract, because at the moment they have got Benzema as their out-and-out number 9, and then Mariano's the backup there with Jovic having departed for Fiorentina. And Benzema has looked excellent in pre-season once again, had a phenomenal year last year. Obviously, he's the Ballon d'Or favourite, and for good reason. But you're maybe asking quite a lot of him to replicate that level once again. So I do see it being much closer next year. I think it's honestly too tight to call as it stands. But Alan, I wanted to ask you about, you're based in Madrid now. I'm sure there's been plenty of chat about the new signings, Tchouameni and Rudiger. How do most Madrid-based journalists see that defence forming up next year? Will it be Rudiger and Militao in the centre of defence with Alaba on the left, or do you see it working a different way?
Nobody knows is the short answer, and that's including Carlo Ancelotti. I mean, you make good points there, Michael. Madrid's defence is more settled on paper than Barcelona's. But if you look at it man for man, I mean, the left-back position is up in the air. A lot of Madridistas don't like Ferland Mendy for some reason. I personally rate him very highly. But so far in pre-season, they've tried playing Alaba at left back. They've tried playing Rudiger at left back. The right back position is kind of up for grabs too. I mean, you have obviously Dani Carvajal, who's a very experienced competitor, and he played very well toward the back end of last season. But over the course of the last few years, he's been in the position that a lot of Madridistas want to see upgraded the most in the team. They were disappointed when Achraf Hakimi left for Internazionale first and then Paris Saint-Germain. I think a lot of people believe that they need to bring in a strong right back soon to upgrade their team and take them to the next level. The other right back options at the club at the moment are Alvaro Odriozola, who was on loan at Fiorentina last season, and also Vinicius Tobias, who they signed kind of fortuitously from Shakhtar Donetsk when the war in Ukraine broke out in the winter period. Vinicius played last night against Club America in a preseason friendly, his debut for Madrid. And the reports seem to be that it's himself and Odriozola kind of competing for that berth and backing up Carvajal next season. Regarding the centre-backs, it's kind of a high-class problem because they have 3, in my opinion, world-class centre-backs: Eder Militao, David Alaba, and Antonio Rudiger. Now, when they signed Rudiger in the first place, my whole thought process was, this is great. They'll have Rudiger and David Alaba partner together, the perfect blend of kind of technique and tenacity, of bite and experience, of competitive drive and class. I was going, this is a really good defensive partnership. Then, of course, Eder Militao went in and put in a phenomenal season, his best season yet at Real Madrid. Him and Alaba became one of the best centre-back partnerships in European football, in my opinion, although there was some shaky moments toward the back end of the season. And that's created a big problem because they brought in this, third centre-back, and they've Nacho there as well. And Jesus Vallejo, although he probably won't get in much luck in this season, I would imagine. But you basically have this issue where Carlo has been on the record after the Barcelona game as saying he doesn't want to break up his first choice in our back pairing, which is and was Eder Militao and David Alaba. He doesn't want to break it up. He doesn't want to play David Alaba at left back, which is what everyone thought he was going to do when they signed Rudiger. So how that works is pretty much unknown, and it's actually kind of a bone of uncertainty going into this new campaign because, you know, he said that in the European Super Cup, he's going to stick with the players who won him the Champions League, who got into that position in the first place. So I would expect to see the kind of, you know, Carvajal, Militao, Alaba and Mendy back four. But going into the new La Liga season, which they kick off against Almeria on August 14th, I think it's up in the air. Regarding Aurelien Tchouameni, I think he's a really good signing. I think that depth in midfield is, you know, incomparable anywhere else in Europe. I mean, having, you know, 6 players of the class of Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, Eduardo Camavinga, Aurelien Tchouameni, and Fede Valverde is and Casemiro as well, of course, is pretty good going. I think that the way Carlo worked that is over the course of the season, he'll rotate his team, he'll get different players, different minutes, different points of the competition, and Madrid will be fighting on several fronts, so there will be space and time for those players to get those minutes. And, you know, given that both Toni Kroos and Luka Modric in the final years of the deal at Santiago Bernabeu, I would imagine that Carlo will see this season as being transitional. There'll be no dramatic replacement of Toni Kroos or of Luka Modric. It's going to be a very, you know, delicately managed thing. I think of all the coaches in European football, there's few better at that than Carlo Ancelotti.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a recruitment drive over the last couple of years in midfield, just slowly going about their business. Camavinga and Tchouameni got them in early. We saw what Camavinga could do in sort of the latter stages of games in the Champions League last year. I thought he went really under the radar. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. So we're in for a very exciting La Liga battle. It sounds like Alan's slightly edging towards Barcelona, McCubs maybe slightly Real Madrid. And for now, you know what? I'm going to sit on the fence, but I'm sure I'll have opinion by the time the season starts. But I do feel like it's going to be incredibly tight this year. Let's move on to another question. It comes in from Declan Hahir 3. What is wrong with Atletico Madrid? Do they have a realistic shot at the title? Now, Alan, it feels like the summer business of Barcelona and Real Madrid has probably only increased that gap. Although, would you expect Atletico Madrid to improve next year, given that they've made some sort of unheralded signings, and Jan Oblak will surely be, well, he can't basically be as bad as he was last year. Do you see a little upturn in their fortunes this year, or do you think it'll be another difficult season?
No, I think they'll be better this season. I mean, I think last season was an aberration. It was a bit of a hangover as well. I mean, Atletico aren't the kind of club who are going to go and retain a league title. And I think that in a funny way, I was talking about this with a couple of Atletico leaning journalists, shall we say, last week over a few beers, and he was saying to me that, you know, it's almost like if they won a second title, it would detract from the specialness of the first title. And they felt that way in 2014 and in 2021. Well, I think the key to that title winning season was basically overperformance. I think that they overperformed in both boxes. They had a goalkeeper in Jan Oblak who was outperforming his XG against, and they had a midfielder in Marcos Llorente who was outperforming his XG, and they had a striker in Luis Suarez who was outperforming his XG as well, scoring everything that came anywhere near him in the box. So a regression to the mean was always inevitable. What wasn't inevitable was how badly they regressed and how badly they needed a late season spurt to kind of get back up there in the Champions League places and eventually finish third, you know, quite a bit behind Barcelona and just above Sevilla. This season, I think they'll be better. They've signed Nahuel Molina, who's a good right back, Argentinian international, was at Udinese for the last couple of seasons, still quite young, a lot of potential there. And having an orthodox kind of right wing back is really important for Atletico Madrid, because since Kieran Trippier left last winter, they've been forced to kind of, you know, put square pegs in round holes and distort the balance of the team elsewhere. And they've lacked that outlet that they've had in the left flank with, you know, Yannick Carrasco and Renan Lodi laterally as well. So I think that that's really important for them to have that balance on both wings. The likes of Rodrigo de Paul, I would hope to have a better season this year. His first campaign was pretty underwhelming. You know, with the World Cup on the horizon, I'd expect that he's going to be, you know, very, very focused and very, very intense on putting in a good performance for club as well as country this season. I think, you know, João Felix is going to have a big year. He's maybe the young player I'm backing to impress this season. I think he showed
it. This is the year then?
I hope so. I genuinely hope so. I mean, like, I like João. I mean, I've lived in Portugal, I have connections with Portuguese football. I really like to see Portuguese players succeed. I think that he is of a competitive, spiky character. I think now that he's been given that role, maybe beside Antoine Griezmann as their first choice striker with, you know, maybe Angel Correa and Matheus Cunha backing them up, Probably not Cristiano Ronaldo, despite me. I think that he can really thrive, so I'm hoping that he can be the key to Atletico's season, because if they have a fit and firing Joao Felix playing at the way he can play, I really think they could be a force next season.
Fair enough, yeah. I feel like I was surprised that they haven't strengthened at centre-back as well. It feels like a few of them are slightly over the hill or maybe not quite good enough as well. Felipe's now 33, I think Savic is 31. I mean, Jose Jimenez is brilliant, but he's rarely fit for an entire season, and Hermoso, again, sort of form fluctuates quite dramatically. So I'm surprised he hasn't strengthened there, but maybe there'll be a few more outgoings at Atletico Madrid before the end of the window. And Axel Witsel seems like a slightly strange pickup, although with Hector Herrera having been released, maybe they do need some backup for Jeffrey Kondogbia in defensive midfield, but his legs have really looked like they've been gone for quite a while now, Axel Witsel. So I'll be intrigued to see how that one develops. McCubs, let's move on to Jadal's question. How do you think Sevilla will do without Kounde and Diego Carlos? Because they've been spectacular as a duo in the last couple of years. Excellent defensive record. And it feels like just as you wanted Sevilla to push on this summer, they've lost two of their better players.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of a shame for Sevilla because they looked so strong, didn't they? Start of last season, it was really that defence that was keeping them kind of within touching distance of Real Madrid. And then, results really fell off kind of from January onwards, didn't they? And they began looking kind of quite average. But again, Kounde and Carlos were really at the heart of a lot of that. They had the third best defence in the league 2 seasons ago, the best in the league last season. In fact, only Man City and Liverpool conceded fewer than their 30 goals across Europe's top 5 leagues last season. So I think that's a big area of concern for them. They brought in Marçal, haven't they, from Galatasaray. He's a pretty solid defender. He makes a lot of he's very active, makes a lot of tackles and interceptions. That's kind of what you need when you don't have Diego Carlos there. You need someone who provides that aggression, don't you? But at the same time, in the air, he doesn't profile particularly well. Isn't that much of a passer, so they do need to bring in someone who can kind of fill the gap that Kounde is going to leave in that sense. I'd be surprised if Monchi hasn't got another centre back up his sleeve before the season's over. They haven't been linked with someone, say, like Pau Torres. I know you've put down here Kounde and Tapsoba from Bayer Leverkusen. So I think they're both profile pretty well as a player to as players who could play alongside the left-footed Marçal. So I think there's a lot of work to do there, and I think ultimately what works in Sevilla's favour is, again, I still feel like that top four. That kind of top 4 race in La Liga, you never quite know actually how strong it's going to be. Like last year, the first half of the season, it looked like there were a number of contenders, and then by the kind of last 3 months, it never really looked like Villarreal or Betis were really going to make that push, and Sevilla were able to have a pretty weak end to the season and still hold on to 4th. And again, like Callum was saying, with Atleti, they were able to have such a bad first half of the season and still managed to get back in, with a strong end. So I think I would still probably back them for the Champions League, just because they still have, in other areas of the team, they still have a lot of experience that they've. Still, Lopetegui, I think, has proved himself to be a really good manager across the course of a season since he's been at Sevilla. But there are definitely holes there, and I can't see them getting anywhere near the top this season. I think that was it. It was pretty remarkable to see them putting in such a good challenge for the first kind of 6 months of 21-22. But I can't see that happening again.
Yeah, it does feel like it would be out of reach this season. Alan, I wanted to ask you, there's always, as McCubs says, Monchi's always got plans. He's always probably working on endless deals right now. Are there any whispers in Spain about who he might be targeting?
There isn't, and there won't be, because that's not how Monchi operates. Monchi will send Jules Kounde. He will already have 3 or 4 alternatives lined up, and he'll bring in somebody, probably someone from the French or Portuguese leagues. I think Marcao was a good signing because he's kind of a pretty similar profile to Kounde, and to Carlos in many ways. Obviously, there's differences, but I think he will slot in pretty well. Financial realities kind of dictated that one in many senses, I think. The only thing I will say about Kounde and Carlos is that it was never a back two. It was never a partnership. There was 6 players there in that defense that worked together very, very well. That's when they were at their best. It's Yacine Bono, the goalkeeper, one of the best in La Liga last season, aside from Thibaut Courtois. Jesus Navas when he's fully fit, Marcus Acuna at left back, one of the best left backs in European football in my opinion, and Fernando Regis, a sitting versatile veteran Brazilian midfielder who literally dropped back into a 3 whenever Kounde would go forward. Fernando was fully fit. He missed the second half of last season, and him coming back to Sevilla is a very big boost. If they can reinvest the funds they get from the Kounde deal intelligently, I think they could still be, a strong team next season. I think were they on the cusp of something this summer? Were they able to maintain that partnership of Kounde and Carlos? I don't think so. In fact, towards the end of last season, every single Sevillista I knew wanted Lopetegui to leave the club because the way they were playing, the way their challenge fell apart, it was, pretty dire to watch up close and in person, to be honest. I was at the Sanchez Pizjuan for a lot of those games, and it was not the kind of football that Sevillistas wanted to see their team play. So it was looking more likely when the season ended that he'd be leaving Lopetegui than staying and bringing in somebody like Marcelo Gallardo or someone like that, someone more attractive, someone more attacking. It didn't happen. He's staying. He's going to be given the funds to kind of, try and rebuild the squad despite the sales that are being made. But yeah, I think I agree with Michael. I think that they're a long way off challenging for the title again. Like, that opportunity is definitely gone. I think their focus next season will be on retaining top 4 place that they've had for the last 3 seasons in a row, doing a bit better in Europe because they were an embarrassment, frankly, in the Europa League and Champions League last season. I mean, finishing bottom in that group and then failing to, beat West Ham in Europe, not good. But I think that they still are with a very good chance of finishing the top 4 despite the challenges of the likes of Real Betis, of Real Sociedad, of Villarreal, and maybe even of Athletic Club next season. So yeah, I think, it's not going to be a disastrous season for Sevilla by any means, but I think there's definitely kind of a feeling of an opportunity missed based on what could have happened last season. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's good to hear you waxing lyrical about Fernando as well. I always think he was quite unlucky in his time at Man City. Just potentially the right player at the wrong time. Always looked pretty useful as well. He's carved out a really good career for himself. So fair play to Fernando. Let's move on to Morg's WHU question, and then we'll do these in a more sort of quick fire nature because we don't have Alan for that long. We definitely want to get in as many questions as possible. Which club has had the best transfer window outside of the big 3 for you, Alan? There's been, it's been a little bit quiet, maybe in the other sort of, higher known teams, etc. But there's been some smart business done at points as well, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, the transfer window has been a depressing one for Spanish clubs, to be honest with you. I think, we've seen Diego Carlos being picked off by Aston Villa. Just today, we're talking about Nottingham Forest coming in for Alex Moreno and for William Carvalho from Real Betis. Of course, they're open to selling William Carvalho. They want to keep Alex Moreno, but, both these players are playing for regulars for a Europa League team who've been in Europa League for the last 2 seasons, won the Copa del Rey last year, and they're likely going to lose them to a championship club who just come up to the Premier League with the parachute payment. So I think most of the window has been looking at, the financial strength of the Premier League and kind of, not feeling inferiority about it, but feeling a bit threatened by it for sure. And not just the smaller clubs, but also the, the bigger clubs outside of the top 3, you could say. But there has been smart business done. I mean, Real Sociedad moved well. I thought, bringing in Taki Kubo was interesting. I personally find, the constant hype and narrative around a lot of young players, and especially connected to the big clubs. And in his case, he's been at both Barcelona and Real Madrid during his development. Can be a bit tiring. But I think that, if he was to pick a club outside of the elite of Spain, Real Sociedad are that club. They're a family club. They're well coached. They're well organized. They give time and space to young players. They play attractive football. So, I think Real Sociedad's biggest problem isn't their lack of attacking insight. It's their lack of competitive grit and experience and that bit of tenacity and toughness. So I don't think that he's going to be the transformative signing that elevates them into a Champions League contender. But I think that he is an interesting signing. I think that if he is to ever thrive in Spain, it'll be at Real Sociedad. So as well as them, they made a couple of other good signings. So I think that were I to pick a club outside the elite in Spain this season to have done business, I would say Real Sociedad.
Yeah, Bryce Mendes is a player we've liked for a long time on Eurofootball Daily. Can play in an attacking midfield role, can play on the right wing as well, and just seems like a smart pickup. He's actually really, really experienced for someone who's still only 25. I think he's been playing regularly at Celta Vigo for about 5 years. Last year, pretty good output as well, 4 goals and 5 assists. Just another useful player to have in your squad. Mallorca have also made some interesting moves as well. Vedat Mariki has arrived from Lazio, arrived at Lazio with a big reputation after smashing it at Fenerbahce, but a really disappointing return. I didn't quite believe it until I saw it. 2 goals in 49 games for Lazio, so not good. Obviously was playing back up to Ciro Immobile, which isn't a really position any striker really wants to be in because he's so reliable and consistent at club level. So let's see what he can do. They've also got in Pablo Maffeo on a permanent deal after he was on loan there last year, and Predrag Rajkovic as well, who's the 26-year-old Reims goalkeeper who had a phenomenal year in 2019-20, so the year before last. He saved 8 XG more than he should have, and was looking like he was going to get a top move as well. So that's an interesting pickup from Mallorca. I'm aware we don't have that much longer on this, so I'm just going to wrap into the next question, McCubs. What about Sean 15 Mackenzie's question? How do you see Spain doing at the World Cup? Now, we talked about it at the time that at the Euros, it felt like Spain were a little bit unlucky. Do you think they could be one of the surprise shouts for the World Cup?
Yeah, I think I actually, I wrote a top 10 at the start of this year. I think we're like 10 predictions for 2022, and I think I put down I said Spain or Germany to win it.
Love it.
So yes, so I put my neck out on the line there. But I do think Spain are I think they're one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the world internationally. I think they were overall probably the best team at the Euros. I think they really grew into that tournament really well, and obviously in Luis Enrique they have a manager who does have a pretty good record in tournaments too. So they started that tournament looking kind of average, but still creating loads of chances and maybe just missing a really clinical centre forward. But aside from that, everywhere else around the pitch, I think they looked pretty good. A few defensive mistakes here and there, but I think if Pedri's fit, and this is something that I think will be very important to Barcelona's La Liga title bid. Actually, I think if Pedri's out for a month or two, I think that potentially derails a Barcelona title push. But I think the same thing for Spain at the World Cup. I think he is really the key to their success in terms of linking the midfield to the attack and just coming up with those kind of moments of magic that not many other players can do in kind of standalone games. I think Spain have and also I think that squad was quite young a couple of years ago. I think it's going to be a bit more experienced now. I don't see why Spain can't go and do it. Obviously it all depends on the kind of draws they get, which teams kind of drop out at certain times. But I think Spain have pretty much as good a shout as any team in Qatar. Personally.
Love it. Yeah, I think, as you say, Pedri, the performances of him and the fitness of him is going to be massive. Gavi as well. Ansu Fati, who I think was injured for Euro 2020 as well, he'll be featuring as well. So plenty of reasons to get excited for Spain's World Cup bid. Alan, let's move on to Reece Cochran 1's question. Who will be the first manager to be sacked in La Liga? That seems a little bit harsh, but do you have any hunches?
Not sacked, but I can see the General Gattuso experiment ending pretty quickly. I just think that Valencia is probably not documented. It's not a well-run club. It's really sad what's been done to that club. One of the biggest club in Spain outside the big 3, without a doubt. In terms of fan base, in terms of what they can rally, that kind of thing. They're a huge club, a proud club with 2 La Liga titles a century. And to see them go from perennial Champions League, competitors and, title contenders even in previous years to being not even a Europa League club is quite sad. And I know a lot of passionate Valencia fans who are really hurting right now, given what's being done to them by the ownership of the club. So I think that in comparison with Gennaro's quite combustible character, shall we say, we've already seen, Jose Bordalas last season come kind of to blows metaphorically. With the ownership behind the club, we've seen some pretty damaging leaked audios over the course of the summer. So while it seems that Valencia are moving relatively assertively in the transfer market this summer, I think today they're looking at bringing in Samuel Lino from Atletico Madrid, who they just signed from Gil Vicente, a Portuguese club. Brazilian winger, 22 years old, a lot of potential. He's occupies a non-EU place in Atletico squad, so they can't fit him in because they already have Felipe Montero and they have Mateus Cunha and Nahuel Molina. So he's going there for the season, it seems, on loan. Could be a good thing. I think he's the kind of profile that Gattuso wants in the left side of the attacking 3. But I would say if I was to put money on any coach, I'm not a betting man, to get the sack this season, or to leave the club this season first, it will be the quite combustible Rino Gattuso for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Combustible coach at a controversial club for sure. And yeah, it does seem like a bit of a recipe for disaster. They did get Samu Castillejo in, who, you know, had his moments for Milan. It probably didn't go as he expected, particularly last year, and they were looking to replace him for quite a long time, and he ended up sort of being replaced on that right-hand side by Alexis Salamakers, who did seem to add a little bit more quality, but not a whole lot more. But they'll be looking to replace both of them on the right with Hakim Ziyech, although that deal just has been meandering for weeks now, so I'm not quite sure what's going on with Milan. But Alan, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've got to carry on with your day, but thank you so much. Honestly, it was so great having your expert opinion on all things Barcelona, Real Madrid, the other members of the top four, different transfers around the league, etc. If people have enjoyed listening to you, where can they find your work?
Well, the best place to get me is on Twitter at Jules Feehely. That's where I share the majority of stuff that I do. AZULFEEHALY. And then also, of course, in Football Espana, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on the website as well. We'll be covering Spanish football throughout the course of the summer and the season as well, of course. You know, kicks off on the weekend of the 12th, I believe it is, the 11th of August, I think. So yeah, we're all looking forward to it getting going there. And yeah, thank you, Dougie, and thank you, Michael, as well, for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure to have you on. As I say, great to have a La Liga expert, and hopefully you'll, you know, maybe be willing to come back on the show at some stage during the season. We'll see how your prediction for Barcelona's league title is going at that stage. Mikey, if they want to watch another Football Daily video, what do you recommend they watch?
Yeah, from me as well. Thanks so much, Alan, for coming on. Really good to hear your insight on all things Spanish football. I'm trying to think where they should go next. Keep an eye out for tomorrow. We've got the final of the Football Pyramid between myself and Pat. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And yeah, go and check out our explains. Go and check out our scout reports. I think there's one on Frankie de Jong, I think, coming out next week. I can't remember which one is out this week. But yeah, go and check those out.
The most boring transfer saga of all time. Hopefully there's some result in that, or Man United just move on, because I'm so bored of my Twitter feed just being constantly about Frankie de Jong. But thank you very much for Alan. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.